Hey there, folks. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of the Littoral Combat Ship, a versatile vessel that's been making waves in the naval industry. The Littoral Combat Ship is designed to be a multi-mission platform capable of tackling a wide range of tasks. It's equipped with a variety of mission modules, including surface warfare, anti-submarine, mine countermeasure, irregular warfare, and amphibious modules. The Littoral Combat Ship has had a complex development history, with budget overruns and operational issues. However, it's been deployed in various missions, showcasing its versatility. One interesting aspect is that the Littoral Combat Ship is being built into different designs, the Freedom class and the Independence class. Despite this, there have been operational issues and a revision of requirements and designs. The Littoral Combat Ship has faced challenges, including reduced procurement and early retirement. Despite these hurdles, it remains an intriguing and important part of naval history. Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating naval insights. Until next time, keep exploring. A Littoral Combat Ship (LCS) is either of two classes of relatively small surface vessels designed for littoral warfare in nearshore operations by the United States Navy. It was envisioned to be a networked, agile, stealthy surface combatant capable of defeating anti-access and asymmetric threats in the littorals. Although their ability to perform these missions in practice has been called into question. 2. Littoral combat ships are comparable to corvettes found in other navies. 3-4. The Freedom class and the Independence class are the two LCS variants. Each is slightly smaller than the U.S. Navy's earlier Oliver Hazard Perry class frigate but larger than Cyclone class patrol ships. Each has the capabilities of a small assault transport, including a flight deck and hangar for housing two SH-60 or an H-60 Seahawk helicopters, a stern ramp for operating small boats, and the cargo volume and payload to deliver a small assault force with fighting vehicles to a roll-off port facility. Standard armaments include Mk110 57mm guns and RM116 rolling airframe missiles. They are also equipped with autonomous air, surface, and underwater vehicles, possessing lower air defense and surface warfare capabilities than destroyers. The LCS emphasizes speed, flexible mission modules, and a shallow draft. The first LCS, USS Freedom LCS-1, was commissioned on the 8th of November 2008 in Veterans Park, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 5. The second ship, the Trimaran USS Independence LCS-2, was commissioned on the 16th of January 2010 in Mobile, Alabama. 6. In 2012, ADM Jonathan W. Greenert stated that the LCS would be deployed to Africa in place of destroyers and cruisers. 7. In 2013 and 2014, the Navy's requirement for LCSS was progressively cut from 55 to 32 vessels in favor of a newly proposed frigate more capable of high-intensity combat. 8. In late 2014, the Navy proceeded with a procurement plan for enhanced versions of the LCS and upgraded older ships to meet the program's 52-ship requirement. 9. The modified LCS will be redesignated as AFF, or Frigate 1011. In December 2015, Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter ordered the Navy to reduce planned LCS and FF procurement from 50 to 40 and downselect to one variant by FY 2019. 12. In July 2017, the Navy released a request for information for a new multi-mission guided missile frigate that can perform the same roles as the LCS while having better offensive and defensive capabilities. Almost any existing design that can be adapted to FFGX requirements can be considered, extending beyond versions of the two LCS hulls. 13-14. In April 2020, it was announced that Fincantieri Marinette Marine had won the contract with its FREM multi-purpose frigate-based design, which would be eventually adopted as the Constellation-class frigate. 15. Design features. The concept behind the Littoral Combat Ship, as described by former Secretary of the Navy Gordon R. England, is to create a small, fast, maneuverable and relatively inexpensive member of the DDX family of ships. The ship is easy to reconfigure for different roles, including anti-submarine warfare, mine countermeasures, anti-surface warfare, intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, homeland defense, maritime intercept, special operations, and logistics. Due to its modular design, The LCS will be able to replace slower, more specialized ships such as minesweepers and larger amphibious-type assault ships. 16. Most of the mission module's functions are performed by carried vehicles such as helicopters or unmanned vehicles such as the Spartan Scout and WLD-1RMS Remote Mine Hunting System and NQ-8B-5 Scout as part of the Navy's goal to unman the front lines, performing functions such as sonar suites for mines or submarines, as well as launching torpedoes against hostile submarines at a distance from the ship, is less risky. 17. Placing sensors on remote vehicles allows the LCS to exploit concepts such as static sonar. 18. DARPA's Tactically Exploited Reconnaissance Node Turn program aims to build a medium-altitude, long-endurance unmanned aerial vehicle MALE UAV that can operate from LCS-2 and can carry a payload of 600 pounds 270 kilograms out to an operational radius of 600 to 900 nautical miles 1,100 to 1,700 kilometers. 19. Aerial view of USS Freedom. A 2010 report by the Pentagon's Director of Operational Tests and Evaluation (DOTN) found that neither design was expected to be survivable in a hostile combat environment and that neither ship could withstand the Navy's full ship shock. The Navy responded that the LCS is built to a Level 1 survivability standard and that the ships will rely on warnings from networks and speed to avoid being hit, or if it be able to limp to safety. 2122 ADN Jonathan Greenert said that the crew would conduct an orderly abandon ship if their ship was struck by enemy fire, an action that might not be necessary on other vessels in the ships were designed to minimize vulnerability with modern automated damage control systems to perform its mission, then withdraw from the area under its own power. 23. Port aft view of an Independence-class LCS. The combat abilities of the LCS were said to be very modest even before the cancellation of the XM501 non-line-of-sight launch system. The Independence variant reportedly has better helicopter facilities and more internal space, while the Freedom variant is said to be better able to launch and recover boats in high seas. Admiral Gary Roughhead said that a mix of both types would be operationally advantageous. 25. In April 2012, Chief of Naval Operations Greenert said, "You won't send it into an anti-access area. Rather, groups of 2 or 3 ships are intended to be sent into areas where access is jeopardized to perform missions like minesweeping, while the LCS's main purpose is to take up operations such as patrolling, port visits, anti-piracy, and partnership building exercises to free up high-end surface combatants for increased combat availability." 7. Navy Secretary Ray Mabus clarified that the ship could operate in combat areas while under the protection of other warships. 26. The LCS's utility against high-tech enemies would be when working with and being covered by destroyers, like they do with aircraft carriers. With destroyers providing extended air and missile defense, the cheaper 1/4 the cost of a destroyer and more numerous LCS can sweep for mines and deploy more sophisticated submarine detecting sonar. Following the decision to arm the LCS with anti-ship missiles, Navy war games showed the adversary's risk calculus was radically changed, devoting more reconnaissance assets to trying to locate the smaller ships and sustaining heavier losses. 27. The ships are planned to have a 3-2-2-2-1 manning concept. That is 3 ship crews, and 2 hulls for each ship that is on station at any time. The other ship and other 2 crews who are not on deployment will either be preparing for deployment or in rotation, in or out of theater. The result is a 50% reduction in ships and a 25% reduction in crews and smaller crew sizes and traditional deployment practices. 28. The ships were predicted to fall short in manning. 29. The Navy has deployed ships with berthing modules in the mission base in order to carry the crew required for operations. 30-31-32. However, the ships are designed with sufficient headroom to change from 2 high bunking to 3 high bunking, which would allow crew sizes of 100 if needed. 33. The LCS is the first USN surface combatant class in a generation to not use the Aegis combat system, though Aegis-equipped variants have been offered to foreign customers. 30. For they have suffered from problems in their communications and radars and will require refits in these areas. 35. Neither LCS class is able to defend itself effectively against anti-ship cruise missiles, which are commonly employed in the littorals. 36. Although they can disperse in shallow waters better than larger warships. 37. Mission modules. Trimmer and hull of an Independence-class LCS. The LCS is reconfigured for various roles by changing mission packages, each of which includes mission module equipment, weapon systems, sensors, etc., carried craft and mission crews. 38 modules include anti-submarine warfare ASW, mine countermeasures MCM, surface warfare SO, and special warfare missions 39. The NCN and SUW modules are planned to reach initial operating capability in fiscal year FY 2014, and the ASW module in FY 2016. 40. Module changes were envisioned to allow single LCS to change roles in a matter of hours at any commercial port, allowing it to rapidly optimize effectiveness against a threat. A report from the Office of the Chief of Naval Operations (OPNAV) on a January 2012 sustainment wargame reportedly stated that, possibly for logistics reasons, the mission module changes may take as long as weeks, and that in the future, the Navy plans to use LCSS with a single module, with module changes being a rare occurrence. 36. In 2014, Independence switched from mine to surface warfare modes in 96 hours on short notice. 41. In an announcement on the 8th of September 2016, the Navy revealed a radical change in operations and organization plans for the LCS. Of the 28 Flight Zero ships built or on order, the first 4, 2 of each class, will be turned into training ships, and the remaining 24 will be divided into 6 divisions of 4 ships each. 3 divisions of the Freedom class based at Naval Station Mayport, Florida, and 3 divisions of the Independence class based at Naval Station San Diego, California. The new organization does away with the LCS's signature interchangeable mission module concept, with each division being tasked to fulfill one of the 3 mission sets. Crewing is also changed into a more simplified 2-crew blue, gold model, like that used on submarines and minesweepers, where ships cycle to forward deployed locations with the 2 crews swapping roles every 4 to 5 months. Aviation detachments will also deploy with the same LCS crew, creating an arrangement of a core 70 sailor crew to conduct the warfare mission and a 23-person air detachment, 40 to 43, surface warfare. In addition to the ship's organic weapon systems, the surface warfare package includes 30mm gun systems, a counterboat missile system, 11m 36 feet rigid hull inflatable boats ribs, and weapons deployed from MH-60 helicopters and MQ-8 Fire Scout UAVs. 40 for 45. The surface warfare mission module is intended to deal with small boats and is called the best swarm killer in the surface fleet. 46. It includes 30mm gun mission modules manufactured by Teledyne Brown Engineering, Inc. 47. The Navy's proposed budget for FY 2015 includes funding for the Surface-to-Surface Missile Module SSMM for the first time. 48. In January 2011, the U.S. Navy recommended the selection of Raytheon's Griffin missile to replace the NLOSLS missile, lowering the LCS's missile range from 25 miles 40 kilometers to 3.5 miles 5.6 kilometers, 3949. The packages were to be deployed in sets of 3, with 15 per set for a total of 45 missiles. Initial deployment of the Griffin was set for 2015, with a longer-range version to enter service around 2017. However, procurement was cancelled after the missiles were judged as too lightweight. 50-51. An enhanced Griffin and the Sea Spear were considered likely competitors for the increment to missile. 52. The Navy chose to integrate the millimeter-wave radar-guided AGM-11 for Hellfire missile to increase the LCS's standoff firepower and defense against swarming fast attack craft. 53. Navy use of the Hellfire gives access to the U.S. Army's existing stockpile of 10,000 missiles. The Hellfire is an interim decision. The Navy is interested in developing a longer-range version. 50 for 55. An LCS can carry 20 for Hellfire missiles, its SSMM, using N-99 vertical launchers mounted within a gas containment system. The SSMM design does not facilitate at-sea reloading. 56. The Hellfire was slated to be operational aboard the LCS by 2017. 40. For a longer-range missile with an over-the-horizon OTH engagement capability was planned to defend against fast attack craft, ships, and patrol boats by 2020 as part of the Surface Warfare Package Increment 4. 44. Norwegian company Kongsberg Defence and Aerospace proposed equipping LCSS with their radar-evading naval strike missile, presenting scale models of the Freedom class with 12 NSMIs and the Independence class with 18 NSMIs, 57. In July 2014, the Navy confirmed that it would test launch the NSM from Coronado to evaluate feasibility, the first time an LCS fired a surface-to-surface missile. The NSM has a range of 110 mi 120 miles, 190 kilometers, greater than a Harpoon anti-ship missile, but LCSS lack long-range fire control systems to detect targets at this distance. 58. On the 24th of September 2014, the NSM was successfully fired at a mobile target. The LCS's modular design makes it possible to add weapons and sensors as part of the warfare suite. This could mitigate the lethality criticism of the LCS, which is oriented toward asymmetric swarm boat threats rather than comparable surface combatants. 59. In September 2015, the Navy issued a directive to install an OTH missile on Freedom and Coronado for their next deployments in early and mid-2016. The exact missile was not specified, but sources say it will be both the Harpoon and NSM, each ship equipped with only one model of missile. The directive calls for up to 8 missiles, likely into quad packs, to be installed on box launchers as a standalone system without requiring full integration into the LCS combat system. 60. On the 19th of July 2016, Coronado conducted a live-fire missile test of a Block 1C Harpoon missile. Although the missile missed the target, the test validated the ability to launch Harpoon missiles from the forward deck of an LCS. 61. In May 2018, the Navy selected the NSM as the LCS's OTH missile. 62. In January 2020, the Navy reported that Lockheed Martin's 150 kilowatts high-energy laser with integrated optical dazzler and surveillance Helios would be put on USS Little Rock LCS-9 for her upcoming deployment. The laser is part of a risk reduction effort to contribute to a layered laser defense effort and the LCS's lethality to counter fast attack craft and UAS. 63. Anti-submarine module. The anti-submarine module had its focus change from stationary to end-stride systems, while the ship is moving that are useful in the open ocean as well as in coastal areas. 39. One of the items to be added is a torpedo detection capability. 60. For sales has sold 1 Captus for low-frequency active sonar to the U.S. Navy to be towed behind the LCS, with a potential order of 25 units. 65. The USN tested combination of this unit, derived from the Sonar 2087 on British Type 23 frigates, with the TB-37 multifunction towed array MFTA found on U.S. warships. 66. As of September 2013, deployment of the ASW module was planned for 2016, with the 2013 sequestration cuts potentially pushing it back to 2017. 67. Submarine detection will be achieved on the LCS using a variable depth sonar VDS and the TB-37 MFTA. Both can passively listen or actively emit to analyze the returns. 68. 69. 70. The VDS was originally planned to be the Raytheon N SQS-62, but the Navy cancelled it in 2020 due to high risk, instead choosing the Thales Captus for in 2023. 69. The VDS will allow the LCS to detect diesel-electric submarines while on the move. Submarines can hide behind water layers based on how sound is refracted through the temperature, salinity, and pressure profile. A VDS can pierce layers better than hull-mounted sonars found on destroyers and cruisers. LCSS will also be fitted with a torpedo deco system under development. 71. To destroy submarines, an MH-6OS helicopter will deploy the Mark 50 for lightweight torpedo. 72. A war game held by the Naval War College demonstrated the possibility of using the LCS in open water operations to assist carrier strike groups and guided missile destroyers. The LCS was found to be more useful in open water operations than previously considered. The war game found that an LCS operating the ASW package could perform the mission, which freed up a destroyer that would normally perform the mission to contribute to the lethality of the strike group. Submarine hunting ability is increased by the combination of a destroyer's towed array and hull-mounted sonar and an LCS's VDS. 37. In July 2015, the Navy awarded 3 contracts to reduce the weight of the package elements down to or below 105 metric tons total to meet mission package weight requirements. Since both elements are mature and fielded, the VDS on Royal Navy Type 23 frigates and MFTA on Arleigh Burke and Zumwalt-class destroyers, the systems cannot be overhauled, and other weight reduction ideas need to be implemented, such as lightning sensors and using composites in the handling system. 73 plans for the package shifted dramatically in 2011 when it was decided not to use the RMMV used in the MCM package in favor of an in-stride capability. The ASW elements were chosen as cost-effective COT sensors, so weight reduction needs between 15 and 25% have been planned for since their selection for integration onto the LCS-74 Mine Countermeasure Module, a fleet-class unmanned surface vessel during testing. The USV will be used for both MCN and ASW. The Mine Countermeasure Module MCM is designed to provide minesweeping, remotely detecting and bypassing mines, and mine hunting, detecting, and disabling. It was envisioned to perform influence mine hunting via acoustic and magnetic signatures rather than contact or mechanical mine hunting. The MCM includes the Airborne Laser Mine Detection System, the Airborne Mine Neutralization System, the AQS-208 Underwater Towed Sonar, the Remote Mine Hunting System, the Coastal Battlefield Reconnaissance and Analysis System, and the Knifefish, a surface mine countermeasure unmanned undersea vehicle. Cancelled module features include the Organic Airborne and Surface Influence Sweep System, and the Rapid Airborne Mine Clearance System, 75. The final increment for MCM will not have an EOD team or an in-stride capability to neutralize discovered mines. Neutralization is preceded by post-detection mission analysis, 67. The first increment of the MCM included 3 systems: the Helicopter-Deployed Airborne Laser Mine Detection System AMS, the Airborne Mine Neutralization System AMS, and the Remote Mine Hunting System RMS, composed of the Remote Multi-Mission Vehicle RMMV paired with the AQS-208 sonar. The ALMDS detects mines near the top of the water, and the RMS will detect them below the waterline. To destroy mines, the AMS is lowered by the helicopter and guided by an operator on board to neutralize it. Increment 2 will be the Coastal Battlefield Reconnaissance and Analysis System Cobra, mounted on the MQ-8B to search beaches and surf zones, 72. Increment 3 will involve adding the Fleet-class Unmanned Surface Vessel USV with the Unmanned Surface Sweep System US, a cable towed behind the boat. Each LCS will carry 2, and they will be used for both MCN and ASW. It will mimic the acoustic and magnetic signature of a ship to fool magnetic and influence mines into detonating. Introduction is expected in 2017. The final increment will be the Knifefish Unmanned Underwater Vehicle UUV to find and detect buried mines in 2019, 72. In February 2016, the Navy announced they were halting procurement of the RMMV due to reliability issues, with the existing 10 RMMVs to be upgraded to increase reliability, 76. The upgraded RMMVs will be fielded in 2018, and testing will be conducted to see if the Fleet-class Common Unmanned Surface Vessel CUSV can tow the AQS-208, and if successful, will be used for mine hunting by 2020. If the Knifefish UUV can have its endurance increased, the vessel will take over the mission from both systems, 77. Irregular warfare and amphibious modules. The Navy included an irregular warfare package in its 2012 budget request to Congress, 78. Californian Congressman Duncan D. Hunter wrote that the purchase of 55 LCS units was made at the cost of 10 fewer amphibious vessels, 79. Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps General Joseph Dunford said in 2011 that the LCS is one of the platforms under consideration to help close the gap in amphibious shipping. 80. In August 2014, USS Coronado demonstrated the ability to rapidly stage and deploy Marine Corps ground units, including operations to Marine Light Attack Helicopter Squadrons HMLA that conducted day and night deck landing qualifications. The Independence-class LCS's features of high speed, a large flight deck to support UH-1Y Venom and AH-1W Super Cobra helicopters, and reconfigurable mission bay can support air and small boat employment and delivery of ground and air forces. A small marine ground unit can be carried within an embarked mission module. 81. In 2014, Marine Corps General John M. Paxton Junior claimed several deficiencies in using an LCS for amphibious operations as a substitute platform for an amphibious assault ship, including the ability to operate in difficult sea states, survivability in contested waters, limited flight deck and berthing space, and command and control limitations. 82. In 2014, the U.S. Coast Guard began advocating the LCS as a tailor-made platform for drug interdiction missions. Under pressure from Navy vessels retiring, the Coast Guard will suffer a surface vessel shortage for intercepting smuggling ships in the Caribbean area, forcing the Navy to examine other platforms for drug interdiction. The Coast Guard noted that the LCS has previously performed this task, and pointed towards its high-speed and embarked helicopters to run down fast smuggling boats. The Navy plans to base 10 Freedom-class ships at Naval Station Mayport, Florida, which could be tasked to conduct interdiction missions. 83. Development. In the late 1990s, the U.S. Navy realized its Cold War era cruisers and destroyers had been designed for open ocean warfare and would be vulnerable in shallow coastal waters, where they would face dangers from high-speed boats, missile-firing fast attack craft, small submarines, sea mines, and land and air-launched anti-ship missiles. The Navy's official solution was the DD-21, a large coastal warship that could absorb hits. Two Navy strategists, retired Captain Wayne Hughes and Vice Admiral Art Chabrowski, refined an opposing street fighter concept for a 1,000-ton small, specialized, and heavily armed vessel costing just $90 million ($2001). Being small, light and numerous, the Street Fighter was envisioned as a single-serving ship to be abandoned once it suffered battle damage deemed fatal to the ship, made possible by its low cost. The concept of a manned expendable warship was contentious and the idea was not picked up. When Donald Rumsfeld was made Secretary of Defense in early 2001, he promised transformational approaches and doing jobs with fewer people. In October 2001, Chabrowski was assigned to head the Pentagon's new Office of Force Transformation, shortly after which Admiral Vernon Clark canceled the DD-21 and replaced it with a family of ships, including the Littoral Combat Ship, being motivated to produce ships cheaper and faster to increase fleet size. Clark declared the LCS was his most transformational effort and #1 budget priority. In 2003, 84. The Navy committed to the $15 billion 2003 program in advance of rigorous analysis or clearly defined purpose, appearance, or survivability. Proponents typically pointed to its speed, asymmetric littoral threats, and impact on the U.S. shipbuilding industry. The LCS suffered from requirements creep, adding more missions and equipment, potentially rendering it too complex and expensive to use. When it was decided the ship would not be expendable, the original concept of a small, cheap, simple coastal warship became bigger, more expensive, and more complicated, with a smaller crew due to automation. The new design was assigned 6 different missions, which had been previously performed by individual ships: submarine and mine hunting, combating small boats, intelligence gathering, transporting special forces, and counter-drug and piracy patrols. Each ship would be big enough to sail across the Pacific alone, embark a helicopter, have a minimum 40-knot top speed, and cost $220 million. The Navy was only willing to build one type of ship. The ship's task force, realizing that it would be virtually impossible for one vessel to fill all roles, advocated for a larger hull to cover the mission range through modularity, organic combat power, and unmanned systems. Empty space was left for weapon and sensor mission modules. When the first production contracts were awarded in 2004, no mission module worked outside of a laboratory. Fast, cheap construction was emphasized, solving problems with technology. 84. Freedom. The first LCS, on commissioning day. In 2003, the Navy launched its first experimental LCS, Sea Fighter, designated as FASE Frame, or FSF-1. 85. In 2005, the Swath-Hult Sea Fighter entered service as an experimental vessel, using mission modules. 86. As the Oliver Hazard Perry, Osprey, and Avenger classes were reaching the end of their lives, the U.S. Navy released the LCS requirement. In 2004, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics and Raytheon submitted design proposals. It was decided to produce 2 vessels each: Flight 0 of the Lockheed Martin design LCS-1 and LCS-3 and of the General Dynamics design LCS-2 and LCS-4. After these are brought into service, and experience gathered on the design's usability and efficiency, the future design for the class would be chosen Flight I. The ultimate decision was to fund both designs as to variants of the class. On the 9th of May 2005, Secretary of the Navy Gordon R. England announced that the first LCS would be named USS Freedom. Her keel was laid down on the 2nd of June 2005 at Marinette Marine, Marinette, Wisconsin. 87. The contract to build the ship was managed by Lockheed's Maritime Systems and Sensors MS2 Division, directed by Fred Musilli. 39. On the 23rd of September 2006, LCS-1 was christened and launched at the Marinette Marine Shipyard. 88. On the 19th of January 2006, the keel for the General Dynamics trimaran, USS Independence, was laid at the Austal USA shipyards in Mobile, Alabama. LCS-2 was launched the 30th of April 2008. Deployments and budget overruns. In 2007, the U.S. Navy canceled contracts to build LCS-3 of Lockheed Martin and LCS-4 of General Dynamics and Austal USA, citing failure to control cost overruns. 89. Subsequently, the Navy announced a new bidding process for the next 3 ships, the winner building 2 ships and the loser building 1. 90. In the 26th of September 2008 U.S. presidential debate, Senator John McCain RAZ cited the LCS as an example of botched contracting driving up costs unnecessarily. 91. In March 2009, then Secretary of the Navy Donald C. Winter announced that LCS-3 would be named Fort Worth after Fort Worth, Texas. 92. And the 4th ship would be named Coronado after Coronado, California. 93-94. The contracts for LCS-3 and LCS-4 were renewed in early 2009, 95-96. In April 2009, the Navy announced its revised procurement plan that 3 ships defunded in the FY 2010 budget. Officials also hinted that the Navy may not downselect to one design for further orders, pointing out complementary features of the 2 designs. 97. Former Secretary of the Navy John Lehman called for fixed-price contracts to be adopted. 98. Pressure mounted in Congress for the Navy to control the cost. In June 2009, during a hearing of the House Armed Services Sea Power Subcommittee, Subcommittee Chairman Gene Taylor, D-Miss, said that other contractors would be keen to build LCS, as the subcommittee added language requiring the Navy to open bidding if either lead contractor walked away from the offered $460 million fixed-price contracts. 99. In response, the Naval Sea Systems Command conducted a study on whether reducing the top speed requirement from 40 knots to 30 could help keep the ships under the price cap. 100. The Congress asked the Navy to study improvement programs on existing ships in place of the LCS program. In June 2009, Vice Admiral Barry McCullough, USN, testified in a Senate Armed Services Committee meeting that the Oliver Hazard Perry-class frigates and Avenger-class minesweepers were to worn out to cover the gap if the LCS suffered further delays. 101. Retire Admiral James Lyons, USN, called for a $220 million common design with the U.S. Coast Guard's National Security Cutter NSC program to save costs and meet limited warfare requirements. 100. A Huntington Ingalls study found that the NSC would be a better match for the listed mission set, while lacking the LCS's mission modules to perform many missions. 103. In May 2012, Northrop Grumman Aerospace Systems released a study that showed 7 LCS can more efficiently perform anti-piracy patrols in the Western Indian Ocean than a fleet of 20 conventional ships for a quarter of the cost. 104. To help reduce cost of each ships, in September 2009, Navy Acquisition Chief Sean Stackley and Vice Admiral Barry McCullough indicated that only one contractor would be offered a fixed-price contract in 2010 for up to 10 ships. 105. Followed by an offer to build 5 additional ships of the same design as the first contract to the secondary builder. 106. The Congress agreed with the Navy on this plan. 107. On the 23rd of August 2010, the U.S. Navy announced a delay in awarding the contract for 10 ships until the year's end. 108. FY 2010 budget documents reveal that the total costs of the 2 lead ships had risen to $637 million for Freedom and $700 million for Independence. 109. On the 16th of January 2010, Independence was commissioned in Mobile, Alabama. 6. The Government Accountability Office found that deploying the first two ships will delay the overall program because these two ships were not available for testing and development, so changes may have to be made in the second pair of ships during construction, instead of in advance. 110. The U.S. Navy responded that early deployment brought LCS operational issues to the forefront much sooner than under the original schedule, some of which would not have been learnt until 2 years on. 111. In 2013, Under-Secretary of the Navy Robert O'Rourke explained that cost overruns were partly due to the shipbuilders bidding to American Bureau of Shipping Commercial Standards. The Navy changed this to Level I survivability standards for greater crew survivability, although the ships were not expected to operate after being hit. 112. The Navy acknowledged that their failure to communicate clearly at the experimental and developmental nature of the first two ships caused a perception that the overall LCS program was in worse shape. 113. A GAO report in July 2014 found that the annual cost to operate an LCS was $79 million, compared to $54 million to operate a larger frigate. Navy Secretary Ray Mabus pointed out that new vessels traditionally start off costing more to operate because of difficulties with building and testing ships simultaneously. GA reports of new warships since the 1960s support this claim. As more littoral combat ships are built and enter service, Mabus said operational costs will decline to acceptable limits. 114. On the 2nd of November 2016, the Pentagon blocked publication of cost overruns on both designs. 115. On the 2nd of December 2016, it was reported that the GAO was critical of the LCS's ability to complete a Navy requirement of 30 consecutive days underway without a critical failure of one or more essential subsystems. GOT&E. Michael Gilmore states that the current LCS fleet have a near-zero chance of meeting this requirement. 116. Building both designs, instead of declaring a winner out of the two competing designs. The U.S. Navy in November 2010 asked the Congress to allow for the order of 10 of each design. 117-118 U.S. Senator Carl Levin Deamy said that the change was made because both bids were under the congressional price cap. 119 Pentagon Press Secretary Jeff Morrell said that unlike the possibility of splitting orders for projects like KCX or the General Electric Rolls-Royce F-136, the Pentagon had already paid the development cost for both designs, so there was no further development required for both designs and have them compete for future orders. 120. In December 2010, the Government Accountability Office identified some problems with the designs, including extremely long crew training time, unrealistic maintenance plans, and the lack of comprehensive risk assessment. 121. On the 13th of December 2010, both production teams extended their contract offers until the 30th of December in order to give more time for the Navy to push through the plan. The Navy would be forced to award the contract to only one team if it failed to secure congressional approval. The Navy budgeted for $190 million for each ship, while the Congressional Budget Office projected a cost of $591 million for each ship. 120-123 Navy Acquisition Chief Sean Stackley testified to a Senate panel that the actual price range was for $140 to $460 million. 124. A day before the offer's expiration, both Lockheed Martin and Austal USA received Navy contracts for an additional 10 ships of their designs. 2 ships of each design being built each year between 2011 and 2015. Lockheed Martin's LCS-5 had a contractual price of $437 million. Austal USA's contractual price for LCS-6 was $432 million. On the 29th of December 2010, Department of Navy Under-Secretary Sean Stackley noted that the program was well within the congressional cost cap of $480 million per ship. The average per ship target price for Lockheed ships is $360 million, Stackley said, with a goal of $350 million for each Austal USA ships. Government-furnished equipment GFE, such as weapons, at about $25 million per ship. Another $20 million for change orders and management reserve is also included. Stackley declared the average cost to buy an LCS should be between $430 million and $440 million. 125. In the fiscal year 2011, the unit cost was $1.8 billion and the program cost $3.7 billion. 126. USS Coronado is rolled out in 2011. In May 2012, Robert Work said that the two designs may each be best suited to different theaters, the LCS-1 design being better suited for the enclosed waters of the Middle East, while the LCS-2 design for the Pacific Ocean's open waters. In order to increase commonality, the Navy will force both types to use the same combat system electronics, 127. The handoff from General Dynamics to Hostel of Management for the Independence class led to a 13-month schedule slip, as the company struggled with building the JHSB ships at the same facilities, 128. In May 2013, the GA called for a pause in ship construction until issues with the C-frames and modules were resolved, 129. In August 2013, the USN revealed plans to reduce the procurement rate in 2016, 130. Operational issues. A 2012 report by Rear Admiral Samuel Perez, USN, found that the ships lacked the manpower and firepower to complete the missions required by regional combatant commanders. The report found that the LCS is ill-suited for combat operations against anything but small, fast boats not armed with anti-ship missiles. It also found that the excessive beam width of the Trimmer and Independence-class ships may pose a navigational challenge in narrow waterways and tight harbors, 131. The report also found that the contractor-based maintenance scheme for the ships had led to poorly supervised and unaccountable contractors leaving problems unresolved. As contract workers are required to be American, they must be flown out to any foreign ports visited by an LCS, 132. A special panel was appointed to investigate challenges identified, 133. 20 more bunks were installed to allow for a larger crew, 134. In 2013, Captain Kenneth Coleman, the U.S. Navy's requirements officer for the program, identified the LCS as being especially vulnerable to tactical aircraft armed with standoff anti-ship missiles, 135. Vice Admiral Thomas H. Copeman III is reported to be considering an upsized Super LCS, 136 with space to install needed firepower, because he noted that the 57mm main gun was more suitable to a patrol boat than a frigate, 137-138. Austal's Vice President for Sales, Craig Hooper, suggested that the ships should instead be used for UAV operations, 139. Navy Secretary Ray Mabus has called the lack of identified missions for the LCS one of its greatest strengths, 140. The various modules all use the same Internet Protocol formats, 141-142. In 2013, congressional auditors found that the ships lacked robust communication systems, and a USN review uncovered classified deficiencies in the ship's cyber defenses, 143. At a hearing on the 25th of July 2013, the House Armed Services Committee's Sea Power Subcommittee argued with Vice Admiral Richard W. Hunt on how the LCS would be employed if tensions with North Korea or China led to a confrontation in the Western Pacific. Hunt said the ships are designed in accordance with the Navy's survivability standards, and that the LCS would be used during the initial phase in the theater and sense the environment before hostilities occur. Detractors claim the LCS is not survivable enough for long-range threats that China possesses. LCSs are built to the Navy's survivability category Level 1+, higher than Level 1 patrol craft and mine warfare ships, but lower than the Level 2 Oliver Hazard Perry-class frigate they are replacing. The Navy has said the LCS was designed to pull out of combat upon sustaining damage, 144. The baseline LCS C-frame designs, however, boast a better air and missile defense capability, and the partially disarmed and now retired Perry class, which somewhat counters claims that LCS is unsurvivable. 145. Other observers suggest that the ship's life cycle costs and resilience challenges result from the optimal manning concept, which increases the Navy's dependence on contractors and diminishes opportunities to monitor and repair engineering systems during operations. 146. The deployment of USS Freedom was seen by the Navy as an opportunity to test the ship and operational concepts in the real world. The Navy was about to conclude a war game at the Naval War College to examine ways of exploiting LCS capabilities in Western Pacific and other scenarios. Hunt added that the anti-submarine warfare ASW mission package would play an important role in protecting aircraft carriers and amphibious ships, and the mine countermeasures MCMIS mission package would also provide necessary port security and waterway patrol capability following combat operations. 144. A Government Accountability Office report in April 2014 found that several U.S. 7th Fleet officials thought the LCS was more useful in the Persian Gulf, but not suitable in the Pacific theater, as they lacked the speed, range, and electronic warfare capabilities. The first two vessels from each maker were found to be overweight and not meeting performance requirements for endurance or sprinting over 40 knots. Navy leaders contend that the LCS's shallow draft is well suited for Pacific operations due to the many shallow water ports, typically difficult for larger warships to access. The GAO report recommended the Navy consider buying fewer ships of the type if its limitations prevent effective use in the Pacific theater. 147-148. The GAO also found that both designs were overweight and underperforming. 149. On the 30th of April 2014, the Navy issued two requests for information or fee to industry. 150 to Lockheed Martin responded with a variant of their Freedom-class LCS. Upgrades included an increase in length to 125 meters for 110 feet, vertical launch systems for Standard Missile-to-Missiles or the Standard Missile-6, and the SPY-1F Aegis radar, or an air missile defense radar derivative. Austal USA submitted a modified Independence-class ship, replacing the LCS mission modules with permanent systems like a towed array sonar, torpedoes, vertical launch anti-submarine rockets, and aviation capability to support MH-60 helicopters. Like Lockheed's submission, it had a vertical launch system for Standard missiles, a 76mm gun in place of the 57mm gun, and could take on an Aegis or ADM or radar. Huntington Ingalls Industries submitted a larger, more heavily armed Legend-class cutter. General Dynamics provided an unspecified response. 153. Results from the Navy Task Force on LCS upgrades, capabilities, costs, and alternative options were completed by the 31st of July 2014 for the Office of the Secretary of Defense OSD to review. 150 for 155 on the 11th of December 2014. Hagel accepted the Navy's recommendation to base the remaining 20 SSCs on more powerful versions of both existing LCS designs. The new SSC was planned to have an improved 3D air defense radar, air defense decoys, better electronic warfare systems, over-the-horizon anti-ship missiles, multifunction towed array sonar, torpedo defenses, additional armor, and less displacement than Flight Zero vessels. The new SSC would now focus on anti-submarine and anti-surface warfare, with mine countermeasures handled by existing LCSS. It would retain the ability to carry mission modules and LCS mission package equipment, including 30mm and 57mm cannons, Hellfire missiles, 11-meter 36 feet, or HIBS, and the ASW variable depth sonar. Other planned enhancements include spaced armor, installation of Mk38 mod to 25mm chain guns, improved decoy systems, the Serum Missile Interceptor, a light version of the Surface Electronic Warfare Improvement Program SUIP, and improved signature management through degaussing. This new SSC was projected to cost $75 million more than a Flight Zero LCS, with procurement beginning by 2019. Hagel also directed the Navy to study which improvements could be fitted to completed and incomplete LCSS. 156, 157, 158, 159, 160, 161, 160 to this new design would decision prioritize surface and submarine defenses over anti-aircraft or missile defense, which would be left instead to. Contrary to industry submissions and advice from naval experts, vertical launch systems were not included in the new designs for reasons of weight and cost. In January 2015, the Navy announced that the outgunned LCS would be reclassified as a frigate. Hull designations were changed from LCS to FF, including LCSS backfitted with modifications. 10. The Navy planned to start upgrading existing and incomplete LCSS before 2019. 163 to free up weight for the new systems. The frigates removed LCS equipment that was no longer needed, such as the handling equipment needed to launch and recover the RMMV for the MCM mission package. 164. To accommodate the changes, while using the same hull designs, the original LCS high sprint speed was dropped. The LCS to 11-meter HIBS were replaced with to 7-meter equivalents. 165. A report released in September 2015 indicated that the first 24 ships would retain the basic design principles of the LCS program, with upgrades where needed. This group would be considered Block 0 and also retain the LCS designation for the time being. Ships 25 through 32, Block 1 would include significant upgrades and design changes in line with the intended capabilities of the last 20 ships of the total 52-ship procurement, these being the new frigate class. The new frigates would be larger, with increased defensive and survivability capabilities, 166, reduced procurement, and early retirement. On the 14th of December 2015, Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter ordered the Navy to reduce the planned procurement of LCS and FF ships from 50 to 240, and downselect to one variant by FY 2019. The intent of this cut was to reallocate funds to other priorities, including buying more F-35, Sea Lightning II and F-A-18E, F-Super Hornet fighters, and SM-6 missiles, accelerating Flight 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyer DDG-5-1 acquisition, and expanding development of the Virginia Payload Module VPM for the Block V Virginia-class submarine. Though fewer ships would be available in some instances, those needs were expected to be met by higher-end vessels, 12167. In February 2020, media reports stated that the U.S. Navy proposed to retire the first for LCSS in 2021 as part of a cost-savings measure. If approved, these would have been USS Freedom and USS Fort Worth from the Freedom class, and USS Independence and USS Coronado from the Independence class, 168, 169, 170. On the 18th of June 2021, Naval News reported that, in a report to Congress, the Navy planned to inactivate Fort Worth, Coronado, Detroit, and Little Rock in fiscal year 2022 and put them on the out of commission in reserve OCIR list. 171. In the final budget, Congress forbade the Navy from retiring the 3 Freedom-class ships in fiscal year 2022. 172. By May 2022, the Navy shifted its plans to decommission 9 LCS warships in fiscal year 2023, citing their ineffective anti-submarine warfare system, their inability to perform any of the Navy's missions, constant breakdowns, and structural failures in high-stress areas of the ships. 173. Foreign sales. Saudi Arabia and Israel both expressed an interest in a modified version of the Freedom variant, the LCSI. 174. But Israel dropped out of this project in favor of a new frigate designed to be built in Israel. 175. Interest by Saudi Arabia in LCS continues, however. Media reports indicate that Saudi Arabia could buy 2 to 4 ships of Lockheed Martin's Freedom-class LCS variant as part of the Saudi Arabian Naval Expansion Program, a program to modernize the nation's oldest warships operating in the Persian Gulf. 176. On the 22nd of May 2017, as part of an arms deal between the United States and Saudi Arabia, the acquisition of 4 multi-mission surface combatant MMSC ships based on the Freedom-class LCS was announced. 177. In October 2010, the Taiwanese Navy showed interest in procuring U.S. Littoral Combat Ships to replace aging Knox-class frigates. 178. In November 2023, Taiwanese media reported that Taiwanese Navy was planning to procure Littoral Combat Ships with support from the Legislative Yuan. However, the Taiwanese Navy denied the plan. 179. According to analysts, the probability of introducing LCS to Taiwan was low due to the incompatibility with existing naval infrastructure and combat system, high maintenance requirement, high cost of sustainment, and the possibility of introducing propaganda opportunity for China considering LCS's poor reputation. 180. Japan will design its own version of the Independence class. 181. The warship concept was unveiled in the Defense Trade Show Mast Asia 2017. 182. The Royal Malaysian Navy has also built its Littoral Combat Ship based on the Gaon class design, named Maharaja Leela class frigate.